Welcome to the first part of the Global Logistics course. As mentioned in the introductory video, this full course will equip you with the necessary concepts you need to boost your knowledge in logistics. As mentioned before, the course is composed of 4 major chapters: Introduction to the Logistics and Supply Chain Context, Chapter 2, Logistics and Supply Chain Operations, Chapter 3 is about Logistics Distribution Concepts, and finally, Chapter 4, Global Logistics Trends and Strategies. In this video, we are going to begin with the first part of the first chapter, which is the Introduction to Logistics and Supply Chain Context. In this lecture, we'll look over the various elements that have driven the evolution of logistics and supply chain management. We'll look at the following subjects in particular. First of all, we will define the terms logistics and supply chain, as well as the difference between them. We'll go over the most common logistics and supply chain management applications in manufacturing and services. After that, we'll look at the globalization and international trade, as well as their impact on international logistics. And this will be discussed in the next video. So by the end of this video, you will be able to define logistics and supply chain management and explain how they differ from each other, to highlight the importance of these areas in both manufacturing and services context, and to identify how best practices in logistics and supply chain management can yield both cost reduction and value addition. We outline many disciplines that we believe are closely related to logistics and supply chain management in this figure. It's worth noting that clear career paths in logistics and supply chain management have only recently emerged. As a result, we can see that many current practitioners have backgrounds in one or more of the disciplines depicted in this diagram. Perhaps operations management is more closely related to logistics and supply chain management. Procurement, engineering, quality management, marketing, and a variety of other professions are all closely related to logistics and supply chain. In this first chapter, we'll examine how supply chains are formed by 3 interconnected flows: material, information, and resources. We notice nowadays that many operations managers are becoming increasingly involved in larger supply chain management activities. This is because many processes have been automated and streamlined, and many operations managers are focusing more on customer service and supply chain interactions. Both logistics and supply chain management are fascinating and exciting fields that affect every aspect of our lives. Consider the numerous products that are purchased and consumed on a daily basis. How do they get to the customer and at what cost? Although logistics and supply chain management have just gained significant popularity in the last 2 decades or so, the truth is that they have much longer roots. One of the first references in the academic literature to the notion of taking a supply chain view is in what is widely regarded as a seminal paper by the MIT academic J. Forrester, published in the Harvard Business Review in 1958. Not only are logistics and supply chain management important in today's commercial world, but they're also important in the not-for-profit and public sectors. Furthermore, while much logistics theory and practice has its roots in the manufacturing industry, we are seeing an expanding and extremely effective use of logistics and supply chain management principles in the services industry as well. Just think of the efficiencies which have been driven into many service-based activities, such as banking and hospitals, where the emphasis has shifted to serving more customers better, faster, and cheaper. It's actually a good idea to look at how some key developments in the logistics and supply chain management fields have shaped the growth of logistics over the last few decades. If we want to go back in time and see what was going on in the past, we will see how bulky raw materials dominated international trade. However, today, manufacturers try to increase the value to volume ratio of products being shipped. A simple example of this evolution can be seen in the poultry industry. Companies now prefer, rather than ship live chickens, export ready-to-cook chicken. In today's markets, greater competition and drop in market prices have led a number of businesses to cut costs. Consider the recent price cuts in many electronics items, or the fact that many automobile prices have at best remained steady in real terms, despite the fact that product specifications, efficiency, and quality have all increased dramatically. Nowadays, businesses make certain that any products being transported are configured so as to reduce as much as possible their transport cost sensitivity. Another development that we observe in the last decade is that of productivity improvement. Containers can be stacked on top of each other on board the ship, making efficient use of space and cargo management. Furthermore, freight may now be transported from point of origin to point of destination using a variety of modes and services with better ease of handling. The implementation and growth of containerization resulted in tremendous changes in ports that were historically dominated by large workforces responsible for manual bulk cargo handling. Containerization has cut the cost of moving freight by sea and boosted its efficiency significantly. It spread to other forms of transportation, and numerous partnerships between transportation corporations were developed. Today, most businesses are increasingly aware that unnecessary inventories can cost large amounts of money. Managers traditionally believe the various functions in which inventory played a vital role, such as transportation, warehousing, purchasing, and marketing, to be separate and distant. Companies have recently realized that more streamlined and targeted inventory management can result in significant cost savings and productivity gains. As a result, cost reductions were recognized by removing unneeded inventory, and just-in-time delivery became popular in many industries. Now that the key concepts that influenced logistics and supply chain management evolution have been described, it is necessary to explain and define those concepts. While defining logistics and supply chain management at one point may seem an elementary job, defining and differentiating these words correctly at this juncture is critically important, as this will shape your understanding. So what is logistics? Logistics is the process of planning, implementing, and controlling procedures for the efficient and effective transportation and storage of goods, including services and related information, from the point of origin to the point of consumption for the purpose of conforming to customer requirements. This definition includes inbound, outbound, internal, and external movements. Another way of understanding what is involved in logistics is to see it as including various rights: getting in the right way, the right product, in the right quantity and right quality, in the right place and the right time, for the right customer at the right cost. Ensuring optimal performance in relation to each of these rights can be simple for many, but it can be quite a challenge to get it right together. Let's now review the evolution of the integrated supply chain. Until the 1960s and 1970s, the many functions that currently involved in the logistics discipline were thought as separate and distinct, and were handled according to that. Companies began to see the benefits of integration and more recently collaboration in the 1980s and beyond, and this began to shift rapidly. The term supply chain management was created by consultants in the early 1980s and has received a lot of attention since then. Now, what is supply chain management? Supply chain management is the management across and within a network of upstream and downstream organizations of both relationships and flows of material, information, and resources. The purposes of supply chain management are to create value, enhance efficiency, and satisfy customers. Thus, the supply chain is a term that is much broader, inter-company, boundary-spreading than logistics. The integrated supply chain is defined by a large number of interconnected installations. We handle the product and information flow from the suppliers to the final customers in an integrated supply chain. In fact, supply chains encompass a number of key flows: physical flows of materials, flows of information that inform the supply chain resources, in particular finance, but also others, such as people and equipment, that help the supply chain function efficiently. However, not all supply chain resources are measurable. For example, good quality intercompany relationships are often cited as a very important ingredient in successful supply chains. Now that logistics and supply chain management have been described, the consideration must be given to the question of how these two terms differ. So, 4 perspectives on logistics versus supply chain management have emerged. Supply chain management is considered as a category of logistics by traditionalists, as if it were a logistics add-on. In terms of relabeling, it is argued that logistics has been replaced by the more modern term supply chain management. Logistics is viewed as part of a wider group, supply chain management, by unionists. And finally, the view of the intersectionists indicates that there is overlap between parts of both logistics and supply chain management, but also that each separates and distant elements. So to conclude, here are some important insights. Logistics is part of the supply chain. Supply chain management includes a much broader intercompany and cross-boundary concepts than logistics. And I assume that if you look again at the logistics and supply chain management concepts presented in the previous slides, it would be very clear. Always in the introduction of the first chapter, let's see in the interesting topic related to logistics and supply chain context, which is the various applications of these areas to manufacturing and services. Most of the early use of both logistics and supply chain analysis was in the context of manufacturing. Let's take Dell as an example. This PC manufacturer employs powerful logistics methods and competes across its whole supply chain. Dell competes not just on the basis of low-cost PCs, but also on the basis of key service features. For example, the ability for customers to purchase their products online and the fast delivery of purchased products to customers, and so forth. IKEA is another wonderful example of a company that employs best practices in logistics and supply chain in both production and services. Many goods are designed for customers to assemble themselves. They are flat packed, making shipping and storage easier. Self-assembly is generally simple, with many items containing components that fit together easily. In the healthcare sector, for example, by removing unnecessary blockages and delays, for example, ensuring that required expertise in terms of medical skills and equipment is available when needed, patients have faster access to a variety of services, allowing them to recover faster and leave the hospital sooner, resulting in overall system efficiency improvements. It is now well recognized that there is often 2 aspects of interest in supply chain management: cost savings and service enhancements. In order to compete, manufacturers are increasingly relying on service criteria, such as after-sales service and delivery add-ons. Many service companies are now seeing the benefits of implementing best-in-class logistics techniques and having an end-to-end view of the supply chain. This may be seen as in a variety of service industries, including retail, banking, healthcare, and tourism. The second part from Chapter 1, which is Globalization and International Trade, will be the subject of the next video of this Global Logistics full course. In this part, we're going to explore 3 major topics: growth in international trade, measuring logistics performance, and globalization. So stay tuned and make sure to subscribe to get notified when the next part is released.